All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into ASML.
Okay.
I know you're eyeing them as a potential investment,
Yeah,
and there's a lot to unpack here.
absolutely.
It's kind of a big deal in the world of computer chips. I mean,
Yeah.
they make the really specialized machines that are needed to produce the most advanced chips.
Yeah, the cutting edge stuff
Yeah,
you
exactly.
hear about.
But with all the buzz and the volatility, in the semiconductor market,
Mm-hmm.
the big question
Yeah.
is ASML stock a good buy right now?
That's a great question.
You know,
And it's smart to be cautious,
Mhm.
especially in such a, complex industry.
yeah,
But what's really interesting about ASML
yeah,
is that they hold a near monopoly on this technology called EUV lithography,
okay,
which is absolutely essential for creating the most powerful and smallest chips.
I see.
Imagine a microscopic projector
Okay.
that etches these incredibly intricate circuit patterns
Right?
onto silicon wafers
Okay.
with insane precision.
Wow.
That's EUV in a nutshell.
Okay, so like the machines that make the chips
Exactly.
use this EUV technology,
Precisely.
and without it, we wouldn't have these chips.
Yeah, those cutting edge chips that we all, rely on.
Okay, that's a helpful way to visualize it.
Sure.
No wonder they've caught your attention, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also seeing some mixed signals in the research that you've shared.
Yeah.
Their stock performance over the past decade is impressive,
Yeah.
like way better than the S&P 500.
It's been a good run.
But recently it's been down,
Uh-huh.
and it's even hitting near its 52-week low.
Yeah, things have been rough in the markets lately.
So what's the story there?
Well, it's a good bit of a roller coaster, that's for sure.
Oh,
Over
okay.
the last 10 years, their stock has grown a whopping 67%.
Oh, wow.
But just this past year,
Yeah.
it's taken a dip of about 19%.
Okay.
Now, their most recent earnings report from Q4 2023
Mm-hmm.
actually beat what analysts were expecting.
Oh, really?
They brought in over 9 billion euros in revenue
Wow.
and almost 3 billion in net income.
Okay.
Plus,
Yeah.
and this is a key point,
Okay.
they have a massive order backlog of 36 billion euros.
Wow.
Like, that's a queue
Okay.
of customers eagerly waiting to get their hands on ASML's tech.
Wow, that's a serious vote of confidence from their customers.
Absolutely.
But wouldn't that usually push the stock price up?
You would think so, right?
Yeah, so why are we seeing this disconnect?
Well, it's important to remember that the semiconductor industry, like
Mhm.
many tech sectors,
Okay.
is cyclical.
Okay.
It goes through periods of boom and bust,
I see.
driven by, global economic conditions
Yeah.
and fluctuations in demand.
Okay.
And right now, there's a bit of a slowdown happening,
Mhm.
especially in the AI sector.
Okay.
You've probably heard about NVIDIA's recent stock drop.
Yes. I
Mhm.
do remember reading about that.
That's a prime example of how quickly things can shift.
Okay, so their AI chips weren't seeing the same demand as before,
Right.
and their stock took a hit.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does that tie back to ASML specifically?
Well, it all comes down to the supply chain.
Okay.
NVIDIA needs those advanced chips
Mm-hmm.
that ASML's machines help produce.
I see.
So if demand for AI chips cools down,
Yeah.
it ripples back to ASML.
Okay.
They're not immune to those shifts.
Interesting.
And here's where another layer of complexity comes in.
Okay.
ASML has significant exposure
Yeah.
to both China and Taiwan,
Okay.
which together accounted for 52% of their revenue in 2023.
Okay. So not only are they dealing with like the cyclical nature of the industry,
Right.
they're also caught in the middle of all
Uh,
those geopolitical tensions and trade restrictions surrounding China,
Yeah, it's a tricky situation.
particularly when it comes to chip technology.
Exactly.
Not exactly a recipe for stability, right?
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
It creates a lot of uncertainty for investors.
Right.
The U.S. is pushing allies like the Netherlands, where
Uh-huh.
ASML is based,
Yeah.
to limit exports of certain chip-making tech to China.
Mm-hmm.
And this puts ASML in a tough position, having to navigate these restrictions while trying to maintain their position in a key market.
Okay. So we've established that ASML is,
Yeah,
this dominant player in a vital industry
right.
with, some impressive financials and demand.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also facing these headwinds from a potential industry downturn
Yeah,
and the ever-present geopolitical risks tied to China.
exactly.
So how do we even start to evaluate them as an investment?
That's the big question.
What should we look at next?
Well, I think a good place to start would be with their valuation.
Okay. I think a good place to start is with their valuation.
Okay.
How does ASML look compared to other companies in the semiconductor space?
Yeah, that's a crucial step.
Yeah.
And it's where things get even more nuanced.
Okay.
So if we look at their forward price to earnings ratio, or forward PE,
Okay.
it's currently sitting at 30.
Okay.
Now, to give you some context,
Yep.
the forward PE is a way to estimate how much investors are willing to pay
Uh-huh.
for each dollar of a company's expected future earnings.
Okay.
In ASML's case, that 30 figure is actually lower than their 5-year average of 40.
So at first glance, it seems like they could be undervalued.
Right, you would think so.
But you're always reminding me that there's more to this story than just one number.
Exactly.
What else should we be factoring in?
You're catching on quickly.
Okay.
While a lower PE might signal a buying opportunity,
Okay.
we also need to consider their projected earnings per share growth, or EPS growth.
Okay.
That's essentially how much their earnings are expected to increase over
Yeah.
the next few years.
Okay.
For ASML, analysts is projecting an 18.5% growth rate,
Okay.
which is solid,
Yeah.
but it's a bit lower than their 5-year average of 22.4%.
Okay. So even though the market might be valuing them a bit lower now, there are some concerns that their future growth might not be as explosive as we've seen in the past.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
I guess that makes sense given the cyclical nature of the industry
Right.
and those geopolitical risks we talked about.
Mhm.
It's definitely a mixed bag.
It is. And that's why it's so important to consider your own investment goals and risk tolerance.
Okay.
But before we jump into that,
Yep.
I think it's worth highlighting that despite these uncertainties,
Mm-hmm.
ASML still boasts incredibly strong margins and cash flow,
Oh, wow.
much higher than the industry averages.
Okay.
That speaks volumes about their financial health
Mm-hmm.
and efficient operations.
Okay.
They're a well-managed company with a solid track record.
Right. So they seem to be in good shape financially.
Yeah.
But I'm still wondering,
Yeah.
what would make someone hesitant to invest in them?
Sure.
What are the potential downsides beyond what we've already covered?
You're right to be thorough.
Okay.
One concern some investors have
Yeah.
is that ASML's dividend growth,
Okay.
while still positive,
Yeah.
has been a bit slower recently.
I see.
They did increase their dividend by 4.8% this year,
Okay.
but that's a bit lower than previous years.
Yeah.
You know, they've got a 15-year history of growing dividends.
Yeah.
So this slight slowdown could make some investors wary.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're still sharing profits with shareholders,
Right.
but the rate of that sharing might be tapering off a bit.
Exactly.
Could this be a sign of caution from the company,
It could be.
given all the uncertainties we've discussed?
Yeah, that's possible.
Or maybe they're shifting their focus to other areas,
Yeah.
like research and development.
It could be a combination of factors.
Okay.
Now, speaking of rewarding shareholders,
Yeah.
let's not forget about their share buyback program.
Okay.
They've been quite aggressive with buybacks,
Okay.
essentially repurchasing and retiring
Yeah.
a significant chunk of their own stock. Over the past decade, they've managed to reduce the number of outstanding shares by 10%.
Okay, so let me get this straight. They're paying dividends,
Yeah.
they're buying back shares,
Uh-huh.
and they have this enormous backlog of orders
That's right.
indicating strong demand.
Yeah.
It sounds like ASML is doing a lot of things, right?
They are.
But you're the expert here. What's the counter argument?
Sure.
What would make someone pump the brakes on investing?
You're right. It's crucial to look at all sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest hesitation
Yep.
comes down to the inherent volatility we talked about earlier.
Okay.
The semiconductor industry is heavily influenced by global economic conditions and technological advancements.
Yeah.
You know, when economies are booming, demand for chips skyrockets.
Yeah.
And ASML thrives.
Okay.
But when there's a slowdown,
Mm-hmm.
as we might be seeing now,
Yeah.
demand can drop quickly,
Right.
impacting their sales and profitability.
So it's a bit of a feast or famine situation.
You could say that.
And with the current economic uncertainty and potential slowdown in AI demand,
Mm-hmm.
that adds another layer of complexity to the decision
Absolutely.
of whether or not to invest in ASML.
Exactly. And we can't forget about those geopolitical risks,
Okay.
especially those tied to China.
Mm.
ASML relies heavily on the Chinese market.
Yeah.
And any further escalation in U.S.-China trade tensions or
Wow.
restrictions on chip technology exports
Right.
could have a significant negative impact on their
Okay.
business.
Okay.
It's a delicate balancing act for them.
All right. I think we've laid out a pretty comprehensive picture of ASML so far.
I think so.
They're a dominant player in a crucial industry
Uh-huh.
with strong financials,
Yeah.
but they're also facing cyclical headwinds and geopolitical uncertainties.
Exactly.
So with all this information in mind,
Yeah.
what does it all mean for our listener who's considering ASML as an investment?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is where things get personal.
Okay.
The decision to invest in ASML ultimately depends on your individual risk tolerance and investment horizon.
So how does someone even begin to assess their own risk tolerance? It feels like a bit of an abstract concept.
It's a great question and a crucial part of being a successful investor.
Yeah.
And think of it this way.
Okay.
How comfortable are you with the possibility of your investment going down in value
Okay.
in the short term?
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay with writing out those dips and bunts?
Yeah.
Knowing that the market can be unpredictable?
Yeah.
Or do you prefer more stable, predictable returns,
Okay.
even if it means potentially sacrificing some growth?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding your own comfort level with uncertainty
Uh-huh.
and potential fluctuation.
Exactly.
So if someone is more risk-averse, ASML might not be the best fit right now,
Yeah, probably not a good idea,
given all the volatility we've discussed.
especially right now.
But what if you're someone who's comfortable with a bit more risk
Mm-hmm.
and you're in it for the long haul?
And ASML becomes a much more compelling option.
Okay.
You know what's fascinating is that
Yeah.
even with all the factors that we've talked about,
Yeah.
some analysts remain incredibly bullish on the company.
Really?
They point to ASML's unique position in the market.
Mm-hmm.
They're essentially the only game in town
Okay.
when it comes to EUV lithography.
Right. Right.
They've spent years and billions of dollars
Yeah.
on research and development,
Right.
building up this incredible technological advantage
Yeah.
that's nearly impossible for competitors to replicate.
It's like they've built a moat around their business.
Yeah, a pretty wide one.
Making it difficult for anyone else to encroach on their territory.
Exactly.
But those bullish analysts, what specifically makes them so confident in ASML's future?
Well, one key factor is the long-term growth potential
Okay.
of the semiconductor industry as a whole.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Chips are becoming more and more integral to our lives.
Right.
They're in everything. From our smartphones and laptops to
Yeah.
cars, appliances, and even medical devices.
It's true.
And as technology continues to advance, the demand for even more powerful and sophisticated chips is only going to increase.
Right. It's hard to imagine a future where we're using fewer chips.
I agree.
If anything, we're becoming even more reliant on them.
That's right.
So from that perspective, ASML is strategically positioned to ride that wave of growth,
Exactly.
even with those short-term bumps in the road.
Got it.
Okay.
And they're not just sitting back and waiting for the future to happen.
Okay.
ASML is constantly innovating, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with chip technology.
Okay.
They're investing heavily in research and development,
Yeah.
working on next-generation lithography machines
I see.
that will enable even smaller, more powerful, and more energy-efficient chips.
So they're kind of future-proofing themselves in a way
You could say that.
by investing in the next generation of technology.
Absolutely.
That's an important point. It's one thing to be a leader in the current market, but it's another thing entirely to anticipate and adapt to future technological advancements.
Right. It was about staying ahead of the curve.
So it sounds like ASML's doing both,
They are.
which is pretty impressive.
It is.
And let's not forget about those shareholder-friendly initiatives we discussed earlier.
Right.
They're paying dividends, buying back shares, and they have this huge backlog of orders,
Yeah, all good signs.
which provides a lot of visibility and stability.
Absolutely.
These are all factors that investors should consider when making their decision.
For sure.
So to bring it back to our listener, if you're someone who believes in the long-term growth potential of the semiconductor industry, who's comfortable with some level of risk,
Yeah.
and who appreciates a company that's actively rewarding its shareholders, then ASML could be a very interesting opportunity.
I would agree with that.
But remember, there's no one-size-fits-all answer in investing.
Nope.
The key is to make informed decisions that align with your individual goals,
Right.
risk tolerance, and investment horizon.
Absolutely.
If you're still on the fence about ASML, it might be helpful to ask yourself a few questions,
Yeah, for sure.
such as,
Well, think about what you prioritize in an investment.
okay,
Do you value a growing dividend stream?
yeah,
Are share buybacks an important factor in your decision-making? And how much volatility are you comfortable with in your portfolio?
okay.
These are all things to weigh as you evaluate ASML as a potential investment.
That's great advice. It's all about understanding what's important to you as an investor and finding companies that align with those values.
Exactly.
And as you continue to research ASML,
Yeah,
remember to look beyond the headlines and dig into the details.
that's key.
Consider the company's financials, their competitive landscape,
Yeah,
and those industry trends and geopolitical factors we discussed.
all important stuff.
The more informed you are, the better equipped you'll be to make sound investment decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I love that knowledge is power. Even if you decide that ASML isn't the right fit for your portfolio right now,
Yeah,
I hope this deep dive has given you a much clearer understanding of the semiconductor industry
Yeah,
and the factors that drive its growth and volatility.
for sure.
Who knows, you might even discover other investment opportunities in the space
Right.
that you hadn't considered before.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of continuous learning. There's always something new to discover in the world of investing.
Yeah, and by taking the time to understand the companies and industries you're interested in,
Yeah,
you'll be in a much stronger position to make smart, confident decisions.
that's the goal.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into ASML.
Great discussion.
I hope you found this exploration insightful and helpful as you navigate the exciting and ever-evolving world of investing.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep learning,
Keep learning.
keep exploring. Happy investing.
Happy investing.